I promise you, I'm not crazy. Now, in our last episode, we had probably more views than most episodes, but we also had a lot of negative comments. Basically, I was kind of talking about the halftime show in Super Bowl and saying how it was kind of demonic in some ways. I can probably answer all of it in a single question. What did the Beatles, Cleopatra, and Jay-Z have in common? To find out the answer, as well as some scientific reasons why my demonics explanation is not so crazy after all, please stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I love this image, to start off with this image, because it kind of it's so in your face. And this is basically the Eye of Horus. You can see this is actually, if you look at that little yellow symbol, that's the Egyptian Ankh, which is the symbol of the gods. And this is the villa of Naomi Campbell. Let me show you who she is. She is this beautiful model who's being gagged up in this V magazine cover. So before we get started, I wanted to basically give a retraction. I had one viewer who made actually a pretty good point, and let me just go ahead and play what she was saying.
For starters, try learning a bit about the artist. The bandages he was wearing when accepting his awards was part of a costume he was wearing while playing a character he created and developed over time. It was an expression about the amount of time, money, and importance put into how people look with the use of plastic surgery, and the final look of the character appears to be a caricature of himself. OP, do yourself, your viewers, and all the people who put blood and sweat into making such a huge production a giant favor. I challenge you to do your homework on the artist and the history of the character he portrays, then watch the halftime show with knowledge.
So here's the deal. When I was talking about the halftime show, which was performed by The Weeknd, well, basically what I was doing is I was calling these kind of masked kind of bandages symbols as kind of like calling back to the pandemic. And the truth is, I actually should have done more research on the artist, because he does convey kind of ironic character of somebody who just got ripped up their faces and had plastic surgery. So in a way, it's a critique in society. So if I accidentally misled anybody by calling it demonic, and maybe people thought that the bandages meant it was demonic, I do apologize for that. Now, on the other hand, I do want to also mention that despite all of this, I do still think that the halftime show was unusually strange and demonic. And one reason why is because there is so much precedence of this in the halftime show. So let me show you a few examples. So the most obvious one is talking about Madonna's show and Baphomet, in the way that Madonna was kind of conveying the beast of Revelations when she was performing in a halftime show. And if you don't know who Baphomet is, this is an occult god that has been shown in occult literature. And I don't know if this is a fact or if this is a rumor, but supposedly the Knights of Templar, when they were persecuted by King Philip IV, they had also admitted to worshiping this god while being tortured. Now, we know that people, when they're tortured, they can say things that they don't really mean. So just take that with a grain of salt. So if we go back to a few of these halftime shows, let's start with Maroon 5. So Maroon 5 was performing with Travis Scott, and then Travis Scott came down in this hurtling comet, which is actually very important because there is this belief in antiquity that a comet might have hit the one that might have created the Younger Dryas. And then he basically comes down, blows up the stage, and then is singing in this pit of fire. So, but if you're not convinced, let's talk about Katy Perry. Now, Katy Perry has this song called Dark Horse. You might be aware of it. And the lyrics are really, really interesting. So in one segment of this song, and she was performing this in a halftime show, she says, "So you want to play with magic? Boy, you should know what you're falling for. Baby, do you dare to do this? Because I'm coming at you like a dark horse." Well, it's interesting that she first talks about magic. Secondly, this dark horse, I'm not sure if that's a reference to the four horsemen of the apocalypse. It could be. I guess you can also think of it as a gambling reference, kind of like calling yourself a dark horse. But either way, the symbols that are being shown in the music video and the halftime show are extremely relevant and I would say kind of disturbing. So if you take a look at her music video, she ended up playing the part of Cleopatra. And once again, you have that all-seeing eye that we saw in Naomi Campbell's villa. And this is the Eye of Horus. When you see the eye in the pyramids, some people construe that as the Eye of Horus. So she plays this Cleopatra character in her music video, has all kinds of strange symbols related to the Eye of Horus. And then what happens in the halftime show? Well, when she plays the same song, right, the Dark Horse song, what was strange about it is that this segment of the song, where it says, so you want to play with magic, boy, you should know what you're falling for, she puts that in silence. So she sings the whole song, but when she gets to that exact part of the lyrics, she just kind of does this ooh, ooh, or like kind of just does a ooh. She doesn't really say the lyrics. Now, check this out. This was the scenery in the halftime show. What is this? Chess with a checkered board? Like, what is the point of this? Well, if you look further, let me show you some more images. Here's the checkered floor again. And here is her performing the Dark Horse song. So the relevance of this is that this checkered pattern is actually a really relevant pattern in Masonic ritual or Masonic symbology. So here's one image. You see the eye with the pyramids, the double-headed eagle, and then of course you see the checkered floor. Here, it's literally on the Masonic floor. You can see the pentagram right there and all these Masonic individuals. And so this is a really prevalent symbol in Masonic. And to say that Katy Perry's performance and having her basically have the Eye of the Cleopatra while talking about lyrics about magic in her music video, but then in her halftime show she's actually performing on a checkered floor. To say that that is random, I don't know, I would say that you're being a little bit naive to think that. And to show you another halftime show, this is the one that happened between Jennifer Lopez and Shakira. So let's take a look here. So right away you see the biblical symbology, and then you see Jennifer Lopez rising like a Christ-like figure. This one's a little bit more ambiguous. Maybe it doesn't mean anything, but it kind of looks like a human pyramid. And here we go. We got that triangle, which could just be coincidental, but look at the checkered pattern once again. So out of all the outfits in the world, white checkered patterned shirts and shorts, it's kind of strange. Once again, sorry about the crude nature of this image, but in juxtaposition with this image, it's strange to say the least. And once again, you see the checkered patterns. Here is Shakira performing. And if you see how from the top in this fire pit, just like Travis Scott was singing in a fire pit, that she has something around her waist. It almost looks like she has a tail. Well, it's something that she actually does on purpose. Like, she actually wraps this rope around her to give this kind of weird look, as if like she has a tail. And then the very end of her performance, it's kind of tough to see here, she's bowing down. What? Like, who are you bowing down to in this performance? What is the point of that choreography and wrapping that rope around you so it looks like a tail? I mean, I think it's a little bit strange. You can take it as you will. So, like I said, there's precedence in the Super Bowl regarding this type of symbols. So, let's talk about the Beatles. What's so interesting about the Beatles is that in their album cover, Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Band, or Club Band, I think it's called, the album, look at this corner right over here. Do you recognize who that is? Well, that is Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley is a famous occultist, has his own sect, and just somebody who is very prevalent in the scene with celebrities. So to make this clear, I'm going to read you a Yahoo News article, or at least a segment of it, and this really explains everything pretty well. All right. So this article it's a little bit old. It's 2013, but the information hasn't changed. So it's kind of, you can say it's a little bit timeless in that sense. So the article is called Aleister Crowley's Sex Cult Latest Craze Among Celebs. I'm just going to read parts of it, but it says here, Wild Child Peach's Get Off is the latest start to follow the OTO religion, that is the religion that Aleister Crowley started, and has its initials tattooed on her arm, the Daily Star reported. The 24-year-old shared her sizzling obsession on Twitter, sparking talks of number of stars linked to the organization. She urged her thousands of fans to buy books by Satanist Aleister Crowley, leader of the controversial Ordo Templi Orientis sect. Famed for his love of sadomasochistic rituals, the English author promoted sex with multiple male and female partners, as well as the use of cocaine and heroin. He practiced black magic and reveled in a debauched lifestyle. Now, many of Hollywood's hottest stars are rumored to have associations with the OTO. Chart-topping rapper Jay-Z is allegedly linked to the religion, as is rapper Kanye West and music star Adam Lambert. Jay-Z was spotted in a t-shirt with the motto, "Do what thou wilt." Kind of interesting because you actually see that written. Let me see if I can increase that. Right over here. You kind of have to read it backwards, which is a thing we're going to talk about in a second, but do thou what wilt. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. An OTO saying encouraging people to do whatever they choose, especially when it comes to sex. And this is kind of like a Satanist type of philosophy, do thou what you wilt, because the ideas that are often conveyed in Christianity, also in other religions like Hinduism with the goddess Maya. So Maya, for example, she is often symbolized with a spider. She is called the spinner of life. Essentially, she weaves this web to which we all fall in. So we all follow the web that she has weaved. We don't just do what we will, otherwise there is no web, essentially. I can talk about Jesus, but we all know how that applies. It's in similar ways. Jesus has his own ways of living that he thinks is the best way to live. But let's look at what Bohemian Grove, what they write in their motto with the owl. Weaving spiders come not here. So, in my opinion, they're talking about the Hindu goddess Maya. I think there are other references. I think like the Mayans had a similar goddess that was considered a spider. I think Native Americans also have the same concept. So it's kind of like a common concept in ancient religion. So I think that's what they're kind of commenting on. And so to say that that's not Satanist or Satan-like, once again, I'm going to say that this is being a little bit naive. Part of the collections include the all-seeing eye triangle and the Egyptian eye of Horus symbol, the one that we just showed with that Cleopatra music video, which are both frequently referenced in Crowley's book. Perhaps most surprising of the sect's possible celebrity fans is Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman's daughter, Isabella, who hinted that she could be interested in OTO. I don't understand why that is so surprising, because we all know about Stanley Kubrick's very interesting film, Eyes Wide Shut, starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, about these billionaires who have these weird satanic-like rituals in their mansions. She shared a photo of her Aleister Crowley-inspired tattoo of the Eye of Horus. That is horrifying that Nicole Kidman's daughter has a tattoo with the Eye of Horus. I mean, maybe the Eye of Horus is not so bad, but if it's inspired by Aleister Crowley, that's very disturbing. Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page routinely took part in OTO rituals and was reportedly so fascinated by Crowley that he bought the Satanist's former home, Boleskine House, on the edge of Loch Ness in Scotland. I didn't know this before, but I find this so interesting because Led Zeppelin has the only song in the history of all songs that I know of that are banned in guitar shops. And the movie Wayne's World actually makes a great reference of this.
No stairway. Denied.
So if you don't know why the song is banned, when you play this song backwards, you get some very, very strange and disturbing lyrics. Let me, I'm almost reticent to put this clip in my video itself in the same way that songs are banned in guitar shops, but for informative purposes, I'm going to show you what is happening here. So, yeah, that's strange. It's strange, especially because when you take a look at Illuminati symbology, well, this is something that was written in the Dan Brown movie as well, Angels and Demons. They like to create these words or patterns that can be read both forwards and backwards while saying the exact same thing. So the fact that you can play Led Zeppelin's song backwards and it has all these satanic-like lyrics is consistent with how Illuminati hides or conveys some of their symbols. And just to finish up, it says here, even the Beatles included Crowley on the cover of their 1967 album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. That's the answer of how the Beatles, Cleopatra, and Jay-Z are connected to all of this. So if you're not convinced by all these images, these halftime shows, the article, I want to talk a little bit about science. Specifically, I want to talk about psychology. So when I was attending UC Santa Barbara, I actually ended up working at the social psychology lab. Have you ever heard about the idea that the SATs and ACTs have racial biases against people of minority background? Well, I was actually part of that study. I was the research assistant who tabulated all the data for that study. And I also worked as a confederate, which is an actor. So I was actually participating in the study itself, trying to pretend to be just a regular subject. But that's something we can talk about another time. The reason why I want to mention psychology is because of the idea of extrasensory perception. Now, most people assume that ESP is something that is just crazy people think about, that if you believe in ESP, then you're less scholarly or your IQ is a little bit lower. Well, the truth is, individuals, great minds like Carl Jung, actually believed in a form of ESP. He called it the collective consciousness. So just to make this point more clear, I want to show you a quote from a psychology source website that I found that kind of talks about exactly this. So take a look. So as you see, the idea that you believe in extrasensory perception is actually, or may be, positively correlated with intelligence, not the opposites. And it's interesting because the reason why I was talking about psychology before is because in my psychology department, one of the things that surprised me is that at least half of the professors believed in extrasensory perception. Now, mind you, these are individuals who are studying the human mind, consciousness, how people react to stimulus. These are the experts saying that maybe this is real. And there was this one laboratory called PEARS laboratory. They closed down in 2007, or they shifted into a different department in a different school. But the PEARS laboratory essentially had worked for many decades on experiments using random number generators. And their whole idea was to get people to try to predict the numbers. And in some cases, they actually asked the subjects to try to change the numbers, whether more ones come out or more zeros come out. And what PEARS Laboratory showed is that although the effect was relatively small, when you consider the millions and millions of trials that they did, the statistics was overwhelming. It seemed to almost with certainty indicate that something very strange was happening. And there's also some people that were extremely psychic, and other people that were extremely unpsychic, almost like they're psyching themselves out. This happened to a higher frequency than expected. So these were kind of balancing forces, and in between those balancing forces, there was still a notable effect that was noticed with these random number generators and all of these experiments. Now, another experiment that I heard about from one of the professors working there is how they had taken two subjects. They asked the subjects to basically meditate to try to link each other's minds. They were told basically that they're going to have to try to read each other's minds and that they should be thinking about each other during this meditation process. And then they were put in these rooms that were soundproofed, but was also shielded from electromagnetic energy. So basically no stimulus could enter these rooms. And then subject A was essentially shown a series of images, and every once in a while there would be this horrifying, just really negative image that would be kind of spliced randomly in between the images. And then subject B was asked to try to predict by writing on a piece of paper or drawing in a piece of paper what it was that subject A was seeing. And both subjects were connected to an electroencephalogram machine, also called a EEG. It kind of reads your brain signals. So after doing the experiment, the results were kind of what you would expect from a skeptic. There was no statistical significant effect that happened between subject A seeing the images and subject B drawing or trying to evoke the images. But what was so unexpected and so interesting about the experiment is that subject A, every time he was shown this splice of a super scary or negative image, his brainwaves would spike, because of this fear that he was sensing. Surprisingly, subject B's brainwaves simultaneously would spike with subject A, which is, this is almost like defying the laws of physics. It's a result that nobody would have expected. So the conclusion is that while subject B was unable to recall what subject A was seeing in a conscious level, subconsciously he was being affected or feeling an effect that can only be deemed as a form of telepathy, a form of being able to see what somebody else is thinking at a subconscious level. So these experiments were really important in showcasing the possibility of extrasensory perception, and this directly applies to the idea of symbology, the idea of the occult, the idea of Kabbalah. Now, the ancient tradition of Kabbalah, they talk about not only how thoughts have energy, but about these different divine planes to which we could actually affect through different practices. Now, these divine planes can be thought about as like a metaphysical world or a different dimension, or one that kind of plays into our dimension at the same time, but is kind of like not subject to our eyes and ears or our five senses. It's kind of underneath everything. So isn't that what occultists are doing? They're constantly bombarding us with these symbols. The way that I think about it is that if you have a certain intention and you have an archetype symbol that is linked to that intention, and let's say Carl Jung is right, that there's a collective consciousness, thus bombarding millions, if not billions of people's minds with that exact same symbol, does it create some kind of gravitation, some kind of attractive force to the very intention of the person who placed that symbol? I think given all these psychology experiments, given the tradition of Kabbalah and its history, and other practices that also talk about how intention has energy and how all of this is connected and makes a difference, I think that these people are not just doing this to run naked in Sonoma's nature preserves. I don't think these are individuals who are just being childish. I think this goes way beyond that. I think there's something much deeper to these quote-unquote satanic rituals, or you can call it occult rituals, magic, Wicca. You got all kinds of terms for this. Voodoo, black magic. Now, my opinion is that a lot of this type of information, if true, would be a form of sacred knowledge, and it definitely deserves more attention from the scientific community, meaning we need to do more experiments. We need to figure out exactly what's going on, and perhaps in time we'll understand why so many of these occult elite individuals are so fascinated with placing their symbols. And it's not just music videos. I mean, you can watch a show like Westworld and you'll see it right in front of your face. Like when I saw this, I was shocked. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So, I mean, that's pretty obvious. And to see the Eye of Horus once again in Westworld out of nowhere like that, maybe I wouldn't have thought about it as very strange, except that the very first episode, this show about artificial intelligence takeover, was splattered with these kind of pandemic symbologies where you had a guy with a mask. And then the whole episode is individuals who have masks. And maybe it's just random, but when you layer that with all the symbology, like the all-seeing eye, in the very last episode, there was these massive protests shot in downtown LA. And as they were protesting with their little masks, they also had symbols of the all-seeing eye in the background with all these woke type statements. And it's just strange, that all this can happen before the pandemic even started. It's very, if not fortuitous, very prophetic, to say the least. Anyways, that is the episode for today. And hopefully, if you got to see it to the end, you will see why I may have sounded crazy, but had actually a sound foundation for the beliefs that I was trying to evoke in the previous episode. I'll catch you next time. This is Felipe speaking, signing out.